Hey, I'm Matt at Mr. Maple.
And I'm Tim at Mr. Maple.
And today we're going to be talking about cold snaps and what you should do to protect your Japanese maples.
We're sitting here today in March, and we've got a cold snap coming this weekend. We're getting a lot of emails of people across the South who have something similar going on, and so we thought this would be a great question to answer for you today. If you like this video, make sure you like this video on YouTube. Also, make sure you comment underneath. And as always, make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel and our weekly emails. We're putting out new trees every single week. That's something you'll definitely want to check out.
So first, let's talk about what a cold snap is. Now, we consider a cold snap, when it gets cold after a very warm period of time. So in Western North Carolina here, we often will get these periods in spring when we're starting to acclimate and then go back down to cooler temperatures.
Right now, we're facing a cold snap here in Western North Carolina. We've had temperatures at night that were around the 38s. A lot of plants in the cold frames have started to leaf out. And we're actually, in the daytime temperatures, we've reached 67, maybe even 70. And so a lot of our plants are starting to push growth or starting to get the roots very, very active and sap active in the trunks. And then this weekend on Saturday, we have 16 degrees. Now the cold snap isn't 16 degrees by itself, but it's the fact that it's been warm beforehand, and now we're getting to 16 degrees as a low this Saturday.
Yeah, so to reiterate, if you're already at 16 degrees, this really doesn't apply. Like if you've had a consistent winter and your temperatures have been cold all winter, Japanese maples are going to work down to zone 5. And so it's not something you have to be consistently worried about, except for those extreme changes in temperature. So we definitely consider, 70s to 16 on that more extreme changes of weather. So those are times you're going to need to protect your Japanese maples. You're going to need to take more caution to ensure that there's not damages from the activation of that tree. And we actually, here at our nursery, always encourage, an ounce prevention is better than a pound of cure, or whatever the old adage is, but it's always better to be prepared, and it's always better to stay ahead of those cold snaps. Being in Western North Carolina, it's something we are always conscious of.
And cold snaps are just those irregularities. It's where you've had a warm spell and then you have a cold spell for a short period of time, and that's when we need to take action.
Yeah, what we love to see in spring is a long, consistent incline of weather. What we don't like to see is erratic ups and downs. And often here in Western North Carolina, we get those erratic ups and downs. Now, there's a lot of different steps we take to kind of prepare ourselves. Here at our nursery, we actually will put on heaters in our cold frames to, kind of pick up the temperature. It's actually the only time we heat. I see a lot of people sometimes on Facebook groups, different things say, oh, it's coming from a hot greenhouse. Well, we're a zone 6B here, and we keep our doors open pretty much 99% of the winter unless there's an extreme change, because we want our trees to shut down and be as dormant as possible. So we want them to be, not being active up until the point we want them to be active. So we keep things as dormant as possible. And the actual only times we heat our trees here are in those extreme changes.
So our cold period on the weather app actually says from Saturday to Sunday, which means it's going to be Saturday night to Sunday morning. So that's going to be the time when we're going to be putting the heaters in our houses. Now, I know that many of y'all aren't growing Japanese maples in hoop houses. So what do you do for a Japanese maples that you may have in containers or trees that are outside? First off, if you're outside and your plant is dormant, I really wouldn't worry too much.
Yeah.
If the plant still hasn't broken bud, there's not anything that you really need to do, because that plant is still acting dormant, and therefore it's going to be able to handle the 16 degrees much better than something that would be in leaf or in a container.
Yeah, now we talk about this a lot, but not giving those trees a false spring, bringing them inside, getting them in leaf, and then bringing them back out too early. That's something you always want to be conscious of. You don't want the tree being active during your extreme changes. So, if you are starting to get active, there's definitely different things you can do. We actually always recommend being preemptive in this. So if it's in a container and you're able to, and your trees are having broken bud already, bring those trees inside. Put them in a garage, get them in an unheated garage, get them in an unheated shed. Bring them in temporarily, but get them back out quickly is kind of the rule of thumb there. You don't want to bring your trees in and leave them inside. Oftentimes people will go, hey, my trees were in a container. I brought them in because we had that cold snap. And 2 weeks later, things aren't looking so good. That's because they leafed out with no airflow. So you can look at our video on growing Japanese maples indoors for more information on that. But when you bring them in for this cold snap, you want to get them back outside as quickly as possible, as quickly as those temperatures are back to a more relative, what they were ahead of time before the cold snap.
And being a Japanese maple in a container, I still even just protect these just through that cold snap, because a plant, even if they're dormant, because a plant that is in a container is more active than those in the ground. They're often ones that leaf out a little bit quicker. They're ones that may be at different stages of dryness. And so it's good to just to bring that in, protect it, because like Matt said, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Why not bring it in just for the night, put it back out the next day when your temperatures are more back to a relatively normal stage? And that's the easiest and most important thing to do, is just prevent anything that could possibly happen. Now, whenever there is things that you might be able to do for plants that are in the ground, if you have plants in the ground that are starting to leaf out, we don't want to be covering them with plastic. That's a big no-no. If you cover them with plastic, you're going to have damage all across that plant.
Yeah, one of the most detrimental things you can do is a clear plastic bag. I see that one a lot. You know, it's good to cover your plants, especially during a frost or a cold snap late, especially when they're active and the sap's very high in the plant. I've seen people tape a plastic bag around the tree, and you're actually going to overinflate that heat. So what you're going to end up doing is it's going to microwave the tree. You're going to force more foliage to then get it more damaged. So you want to make sure that what you're putting around the tree, we actually recommend bed sheets. They make a great way to cover a tree. Often you can get a lot of the tree in there. You know, trees that are too large are going to have to fend for themselves, but smaller plants that we can cover and protect from late frost or late cold snaps, that's the best way to do it. We typically recommend a bed sheet if you have one, because a lot of people have them, and it's an easy thing to get around the plant. You don't want to be adding extra heat. You know, we've seen the mistake of putting a pot over a small tree and then putting a grow lamp or something like that in there, and you're going to microwave that tree. You're going to increase the trees wanting to leaf out. It's not going to be pulling up moisture at the same rate for the amount you're heating that tree up. So you have to be conscious of what you're doing there, because oftentimes you can create more issues than you're helping. The tree might have been easier through the cold snap than it would have been, you know, with that extra added heat.
If the actual temperature is around 25 degrees or above, it's best just to cover the plant with a cloth, a frost cloth, or a bed sheet like Matt's talking about, that's going to protect that from the actual frost getting on the foliage itself.
Now, frost can be a little bit different than a cold snap.
Yeah.
You would have to protect in a frost at a higher temperature than you would at a cold snap, just starting to break leaves. So that frost perspective, we can do a whole video on that. That's going to be, even sometimes in the lower 30s, you can catch a frost here in western North Carolina. So that's a little different than the cold snap, but something to be conscious of for sure.
Yeah, and so we'll probably do another video on how to protect your trees from the frost.
Yeah, especially as we get into that.
But the cold snap is something that everybody's facing right now. And the very best thing you can do is, if you have a container, go ahead and bring it in. If you've got plants starting to leaf out, get them covered with a bed sheet or something like that. Because it's easy to take that action now, and those plants are going to be so much happier if you do that now. If you do have damages directly after a cold snap like this, the best thing you can do is to water it after that cold snap. During a cold snap, these plants, they dehydrate just like they do during the super high heat of the summer, and they're going to need something to really push them along and give them some energy. And so if you have a lot of bad damage, you can always give them some Liquid Miracle Grow or something like that. But it's mainly, we want to do it with water this time of the season, because we don't want to push it too much and get them pushing leaves too much if they aren't already pushing leaves, because you want them to be on the time schedule with everything else that's out in the landscape.
Yeah, and as soon as things get back up here, we're going to be 16 this weekend, as Tim said before. Now, these rules apply in the ground or in the container, so this applies for both. I often get questions about that in some of our videos. We're actually going to water here everything next week when we get back into the upper 30s, at nights, and we're not too in that lower 16 element. We're going to water everything really thoroughly and give those plants some good recovery times. Now, you've heard us talk about it in other videos about ways to have happy Japanese maples, and these are also steps you can do to help you in those cold snaps. Not over-fertilizing Japanese maples are going to make them have better cell walls. It's going to make them more durable during those cold snaps. Being here in western North Carolina, we're very conscious of this. So we always try to grow our trees at a more moderate pace so they don't have stretched out cell walls. We go low on that nitrogen number, and we don't fertilize too early in the season so that the fertilizer is going to be pushing those trees during those early cold snaps.
Well, we greatly appreciate you watching this video. I hope this video gave you something that you can learn from and something that you can use when you're growing Japanese maples, and gives you a little more confidence in growing Japanese maples that you might have purchased from us or that you might have purchased from someone else. And if you did that, remember, purchase your next Japanese maples here at Mr. Maple. It's a great way to support our channel. Make sure to like this video, post in the comment section below, and as always, make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel and our weekly emails, because we're putting out tons of neat plants every single Tuesday at 10 a.m. And that's something, if you like plants, you'll want to be a part of.
Hey, take care. God bless.
and have a great day.